Hello, everybody. Today's theme, college and workforce ready. And as I was thinking about the message today, I was thinking through what the challenges are in the state of Connecticut to help our kids be college and workforce ready. And my sense of what has happened and what is happening is that there is a growing split between what we believe college readiness is and what we are coming to believe workforce readiness is. And I think that that presents us a challenge. Because if we're trying to build capacity to achieve the goal of college and workforce readiness, we need to obviously understand what those things entail. So what I'd like to do today is just spend a few minutes about how we in Connecticut are dealing with this, the good, the bad, and I think most recently the ugly, and what we need to do to try to balance that and make sure we hit the right mark as we move forward. As any facilitator knows, if you ask the wrong question, you're going to get the wrong answer. And I think part of this talk this morning is encouraging us to make sure we're asking the right questions so we in fact do get the right answers. My overriding premise here is that as purveyors of public schooling, this is our goal, this is our mission, to prepare every student for life, learning, and work beyond school. And that is college and workforce ready. I mean, they're either going to go to college and then to the workforce or into the workforce. So whatever we need to do to get them ready for that, that is our challenge. Two things that I just want to start with, though, because they support or frame our thinking on this, is first of all, in school systems, small s, we know that systems drive the work. And as an organizing framework for how we change the way we educate kids, we need to think about the way adults interact in schools and in school organizations to get that work done. And primarily, I think you can put them in these 8 bins. It's the way we work together in central office and at the board level, at the governance level, to lead and focus the organization. It's how we identify what the goals for learning are for kids, how do we define college and workforce readiness, how teachers teach to that, how we measure it, and how we keep ourselves accountable to it, how we organize resources for teachers and communicate those things to our community, how we budget and deploy resources, how we evaluate staff, and how we support staff. There are others, but I think these are 8 sort of convenient ways of thinking about the various ways we interact as adults in schools to help deliver learning outcomes to kids. The other really critical point is understanding what Deming taught us through his work in the quality sciences about the difference between common and special causes. Common causes are those things in the system that are controlled by the system. They are mission-driven. They are things that we do for everyone. So if we determine that literacy is important for every kid, we have a literacy program that every kid goes through, that we test them in, that we keep ourselves accountable for. These are common causes. They are systemic, predictable, and controllable because the system drives them. It's the decisions we make that create those outcomes. But there are also, lurking in the system, we know, outliers, special causes, things that lie beyond the control of the system. And one of the key lessons that Deming taught us is that when you try to change the system to address a special cause, you actually make the system less productive. And I think that's a very critical point as we try to align our school systems with goals for learning in college and workforce readiness. As we think about workforce readiness, I don't think anyone in this room would argue with this point. You know, we are preparing kids for a digital future. And some of you in this room have heard me talk about this before. When I used to do these speeches years ago, I would be introduced as a futurist, right? John's going to come and tell you about the future of education. Well, now I'm not only a presenter, but I'm a presentist. Look out the window. This is happening now. The future of learning and work isn't digital. Learning and work right now is already primarily digital. So we know our primary challenge to get kids ready for workforce readiness is to get them ready to work in a digital learning environment. There's no escaping it. And the pace of change is dramatic and breathtaking. And it is what's driving this innovation. And essentially, as these things pop up on the screen, as you see them go from left to right, you see them becoming more portable, more ubiquitous, more pervasive. That is a man-made object injecting a single red blood cell. This is 25 years worth of growth in technology. And it is driving a revolution. 10 years ago, when I would speak to audiences, one of the main complaints I would get, or one of the main dangers I would hear was, all these kids are going to be doing is sitting alone in their room with their computers playing computer games. They're not going to be able to talk or communicate. There will be no social interaction. And now, as I deal with teachers who can't stop kids from texting, their complaint is, all they do is communicate and text. Okay, well, that's all right. So what are we going to do about that? We are living in a world that essentially is one massive information sharing network. And as we go into schools and talk to teachers about what happens when learners are empowered, how does that change the way we think about school? It is very difficult to find good thinking about this, because we are so locked into we control the knowledge, we control the information, we organize the school around things that are convenient and efficient. We have a control model at work right now. And we are using that model to attempt to prepare kids for a world in which everyone is going to have access to the knowledge. How is that working? How is that possible? How does that end well? Until we rethink a system around the notion that learners are empowered, we are going to be stuck using a system ill-designed for the outcome. Larry Schaefer's here from an organization that created a manifesto, if you will, call to arms, the superintendent's report to try to transform Connecticut education, based somewhat on this exact question. And it's having a hard time getting traction because it is not aligned with our current system outcome. And yet in other industries, banking, in communications, we know that when consumers get empowered, the whole game changes. And it's just nipping at the heels of public school right now, and eventually it will overtake it. If we know that the future of learning and work is digital, then we know we've got to give kids the ability to practice these skills, to use them, and to be guided in using them. This is not about devices. Kids know how to use devices. They are fearless about devices. This is about teaching them how to create value and knowledge with those devices. 21st century skills in any thoughtful room get defined as some mix of creativity, adaptability, communication, collaborative work, independent work, the challenge that you just did out in the lobby. I sit down at that table, I look at that bag, and the first thing I say is, God, I hate this. I hate being challenged this way. Ugh. Okay, force yourself to be creative. Force yourself to do it, because that's not the world we live in every day. And yet, this is the world that they will enter, And these are the skills that they will master. When you think college and workforce ready, if you're thinking workforce readiness, you ought to be thinking about this slide. And it does make common sense. If you want to be fluent in a 21st century skill, if you want to be fluent in the skills of workforce readiness, you need practice, you need feedback. That's how you achieve fluency. To what degree are we giving kids the opportunity to get that practice, get that feedback, and achieve that fluency? My initial response is not nearly enough, and one of the challenges here is because, in general, we haven't given the workforce in schools the opportunity to develop those skills for themselves. It is impossible for teachers to teach 21st century skills if they don't have them themselves. And finally, if you believe the first two things, then the third thing is also true. You can't continue to invest in an analog print school system if your goal is to create a generation of digital learners. Every year we pass budgets, every year we buy textbooks, every year we miss an opportunity to become digital learning school systems. And that's a challenge for us. We need to turn that around. And we know it's possible, and right now, the longer we wait, the longer we will see those kids who have access to all this technology at home getting those skills after school, while all the kids who have no access to it at home, limited access to it in school because we still give them books, where do they get that opportunity? This is really, I believe, a moral imperative for us as public school people, and it lines up very nicely or very evilly, depending on your point of view, on the same socioeconomic gaps that we're already dealing with. And that brings us to Connecticut, and obviously, I'll give you this, if you could afford it, would you do it? I think most people would say if they could afford to go to a digital system, they would. You can. There is the new math of one-to-one, low-cost apps, low-cost hardware, low-cost or no-cost cloud-based computing. You can run a public school for less with digital tools than you can with print. When the right thing to do becomes the less expensive thing to do, there are much fewer barriers. And I think getting kids workforce ready depends on us leaving this model and going to a new, more affordable one that's more mission aligned, especially as it comes to communicate workforce readiness. One of the things that's a challenge in our state, however, recently, is that in asking the question not around workforce readiness so much, but college readiness, we've come back with an answer that I believe is special cause driven and is going to create huge barriers for what is already a significant barrier to trying to make the transition to the digital learning system that we just mentioned. In May, Connecticut passed a piece of reform legislation that by and large focused on a really critical and important special cause driving factor. And I don't want this taken the wrong way. I'm not saying that what we have done to underserved youth in Connecticut is not worthy of intervention. It is. It's a tragedy. We have a significant portion of our population that has not been taught, educated, or held accountable for basic skills, and it needed to be addressed. The way we addressed it, though, was to create a system that layered that special cause intervention on everyone. So if you go back to those 8 systems that we talked about that drive the work, these red mandates are either required in the NEASC or in the new special legislation that passed in the state last month. And they really drive down at a very narrow set of traditional college readiness skills. It is reading, writing, and math. And they are critical, no question about it. But what we've done is created a statewide infrastructure that is going to put such tremendous pressure on everyone in all schools that it is going to make it very hard to make the transition from what used to be to what needs to be. And I think this becomes the generational challenge of educational leadership in Connecticut. If I ask you to look at that slide and turn to someone next to you and say, yeah, I think it's this, and I think it's a good one or a bad one, and this is why. Go ahead. Just, I think it's a good one or a bad one, and why. Give it a chance. When you think about college and workforce readiness, you're talking about a broad set of skills and attributes that are not easy to measure, but they are not impossible to measure. They require different approaches to teaching, learning, and instruction and assessment. What we have done in the state of Connecticut is passed a law that pushed all our chips into the table around a very narrowly focused band of traditional analog skills. They're important, no question about it. But they cannot possibly capture the scope of what every child needs to be successful in the universe that they are entering. So what we've done is we've taken a small set of kids, a small set that didn't get this and needed it, and created systemic pressure on everyone to be ranked and sorted and graded based not on their ability to do this, but rather just their ability to do that. If you think about what we believe kids will need to be successful in this new environment, we know it is going to be in this domain. We've created systemic pressures to do it less, but that is exactly what adults need right now in great measure. Without adult leadership to balance what the mandates are with things that we know are important, non-tested skills, creativity, adaptability, the ability to think in a digital information ocean, tell what's good from what's bad, solve problems, be adaptable, do the hard stuff that this generation will need to be successful. Without that leadership, we are going to miss a one-time opportunity to prepare our kids for their future. This is the most important leadership challenge in public schools. We need to take all of this mess and weave it into a coherent message so that kids get and are assessed on the skills that we know are most important for them to be successful in the 21st century. Thanks.